Okay, welcome to the iPad podcast. This is Lex at Max Future, and this is episode 57, and it's June 5th, 2011, and we're on the Eve of WWDC, which is Apple's developer conference, which starts tomorrow at the Moscone Center in San Francisco, and it's going to be an epic WWDC, because Steve Jobs, who's been out sick from Apple, is going to be there to do the keynote speech, and they're going to be talking about three things they've already announced. One is Lion, the next operating system for the Mac. The next is iOS 5, which is the next operating system for the iDevices, including the beloved iPad. And finally, iCloud. So it's going to be crazy, and you know what? If it's really that great, I might do a special tomorrow night where I just go out and do a podcast talking about what my impressions are of the event. So let's get to the first story. So the first story concerns a leak already of what might be in store at WWDC tomorrow. It came via TechCrunch, and I read about it on Mac Rumors, which reported on what TechCrunch said. And one thing that might be big and actually something that affects the iPad is that TechCrunch reports that Apple will be integrating Twitter photo sharing directly into iOS 5. Now, iOS 5 will be the operating system for the iPad and for the iPhone and iPod Touches. And what TechCrunch says is, we've heard from multiple sources that Twitter is likely to have a big-time partner for such a service, Apple. Specifically, we're hearing that Apple's new iOS 5 will come with an option to share images to Twitter baked into the OS. This would be similar to the way you can currently share videos on YouTube with one click in iOS. Obviously, a user would have to enable this feature by logging in with their Twitter credentials in iOS. There would then be a send to Twitter option for pictures stored on your device. Max Rumor says Twitter is said to be offering their own photo sharing service in the near future. Apple will be detailing iOS 5 during WWDC next week. And then Mac Rumors points out, Daring Fireball's John Gruber adds some comments suggesting that Twitter integration is indeed iOS 5 in iOS 5, and that there is more to it than just photo integration. He goes on, his quoted as saying, "So close to the bigger story, but yet so far. Imagine what else the system could provide if your Twitter account was a system-level service." So, okay, if you're not familiar with Twitter, it's basically a social media communications service on the internet that has essentially a lot of apps on the iPhone and iPad for, doing your Twitter stuff. And in Twitter, you follow people and people follow you. And the limitation is you can only write messages at 140 characters a pop. But you can put in things like links to stories that you're interested in. So you can put a Twitter button on your browser, and if you like the story, you tweet the story with a few comments like, "Hey, look at this story about, Mac OS X. It looks really groovy." And then the people who follow you see that you said that, and then they can click on a link. But you can also tweet photos and say, "Look at this great picture of my dog, eating a cheeseburger." And people then can look at the picture, and the same with videos. And the service is, grown by leaps and bounds. But here's what I think. I think Apple eventually is going to buy Twitter, because Apple desperately is trying to develop its own social media with, the Ping service, which is in iTunes. And Twitter, I've read reports from business people that Twitter is not growing in the leaps and bounds it once did, that maybe Twitter is sort of for hardcore people, people who are hardcore tech people like me who really love technology. And I guess there's a couple of 100 million Twitter users, and Twitter's played a big role, but it hasn't been monetized. Now, what if Apple acquired Twitter? I mean, it's going to bake it into the iOS 5. So let's first deal with that. So what does that mean? What that means is that if it's baked in, Apple's going to make it easy for any developer making an app to have that app access Twitter. Right now, you can access it using Twitter's API, but Apple could make it really simple in the iOS and the SDK for developers to just say, hey, do you want your app to be able to send data to Twitter? So from within any app, whether it's a photo app or a writing app or anything else, you're going to be able to tweet this. And Apple's doing this because it recognizes that a lot of people like Twitter, and so it makes the devices easier as a social media thing. And maybe Apple's doing it because it has a better relationship with the people who run Twitter than the people who run Facebook. Because right now there isn't full Facebook integration. There's YouTube integration, so it's easier to send stuff to YouTube, but not to Facebook. It's not like baked into everything. So my take on it is Apple's a big player on the internet, and I wouldn't be surprised that it starts off with Twitter being baked into the iOS 5, and then eventually Apple buys it. Apple has $65 billion in cash. Twitter is a service that could enhance the Apple experience, and Apple could find ways of making Twitter more interesting. That's my take on it. Okay, so another story is also a leak from Mac Rumors, and it really has to do with what's going to be in iOS 5. Now, iOS 5 is going to be a major release by Apple. Essentially, this is going to be the operating system for the iPad and for the iPhone and iPod Touch, and I really think it's going to be amazing. I think there's going to be all sorts of features that we really want, and some features we never thought about. So Mac Rumors on June 3rd, this Friday, had a story out saying that somebody figured out there was a leak already in Apple's iTunes, which gives you an idea of what's going to be coming in iOS 5. And basically they saw, a Mac Rumors reader discovered that when asking iTunes to check your app library for updates, iTunes update page reveals a new feature for iOS devices. The following line has been added to the My App update screen. And the quote is, or if your device has automatic download enabled for apps, your updates will download to your device without having to sync. So what this means is that, and then apparently this language disappeared. So what this means is, like right now, if you want to like update an app, you have to sync it with iTunes on your computer and then click update. And it updates like everything in your, all your apps get updated. And you can't automatically update on your iPad or iPhone your apps. You have to go to the update page, check for updates, and affirmatively press yes. But what I would like, and what this seems to say, is that iOS 5 will give you the ability to make individual settings for particular apps. Like you could say for certain apps, just automatically update them the minute they're available to be updated. But you might not want that for every app. So for some apps you say, no, don't update automatically, only update when I say so. I would love that feature because occasionally there's been instances when I don't want to update an app. And I'll give you an example. A couple of months ago, the Twitter app was upgraded by Twitter, and people hated it. People were very critical of it. And I didn't like it, and I didn't want it. Yet I kept accidentally upgrading myself because when I would upgrade my other apps, the Twitter app would be upgraded. And I had to go through this rigmarole where I would go into Time Machine and go back in Time Machine, recover an old version of the app, and then restore the old version. But wouldn't it be nice if you could just say in the settings for each app, like, I wouldn't be surprised if Apple puts it in the iOS settings, that you go into your app and you say, no, this app I want to automatically update. I don't even have to do anything. Once it's available, once I'm connected to the internet, it just automatically updates. I don't even have to think about it. That would be great. Also, the ability not to have that feature for certain apps. So I think we're going to see something like that, and I'm going to be very happy that that's implemented because it's getting kind of complicated. I have hundreds of apps. Some I want updated, some I don't want updated, and it'd be nice to have that choice. Okay, so one of the big things that's going to be announced maybe tomorrow at WWDC is iCloud, which is going to be Apple's revamped mobile me service, Apple's digital music streaming service, and there are leaks now coming out as to what iCloud will cost and how much it would be. And the LA Times blog had a story out on June 2nd, which basically indicated that at the beginning, the iCloud music streaming service is going to initially be free, and then it's going to be a subscription fee of about $25 a year. And so they say that initially the service will be offered for a free period to people who buy music from Apple's iTunes digital download stores, allowing users to upload their music to Apple's computers, where they can then play from a web browser or internet-connected Apple device. It then goes on to say the company plans to eventually charge a subscription fee, about $25 a year, for the service. Apple would also sell advertising around its iCloud service. It goes on to say the agreements finalized this week with the music companies call for Apple to share 70% of any revenue from iCloud's music service with record labels, as well as 12% with music publishers holding the songwriting rights. Apple is expected to keep the remaining 18%, said people knowledgeable with the terms. Music companies that have signed on to iCloud include Warner Music, EMI Music Group, Universal Music Group, Sony, and Sony. So, this is interesting, because first of all, I think $25 a year is a great deal for consumers. I mean, that's not a lot of money. That comes to like $2 a month, essentially. I would sign up for it if I could stream my music online. Now, the bigger question is, what about all the music you already have on your computer? Are they going to, one of the rumors that was out last week was that Apple's going to just scan what you have, and even if you didn't buy it from Apple, they were going to make those songs available for you to stream. Now, maybe that's asking too much, but I think that would be the gold standard of what we want. If Apple's going to make us upload our music, that's going to be a real pain. All my music is backed up to Backblaze, and that took quite a while to do. So this is going to be great if you have an iPad or an iPhone. What this means is that, for iPad, we have the most storage you can get on an iPad is 64 gigabytes. And what if you have a 200, gigabyte music library? Streaming is going to have to be the way to solve that. SSD storage isn't big enough and cheap enough yet to really have a terabyte iPad. So it's kind of a pain if you're traveling around and using your iPad as your main computer to listen and have access to all your music. So I think iCloud's going to be a big win for a lot of people who have iPads, as well as a lot of people who have other iDevices like the iPhone. Okay, so the next story, which comes from Cult of Mac, also has a leak regarding what will be announced tomorrow, and it also does affect the iPad. And so here's what's interesting. According to Leander Kahaney, who's the founder of Cult of Mac, he says that Apple is going to come out with a new Time Capsule backup router. The Time Capsule is essentially an Apple Internet Wi-Fi router with a hard drive in it. And it came out a number of years ago, and you can use it both as an external hard drive, but you can also use it as a router and a Wi-Fi router. And in the last week, there's been reports that Apple stock of Time Capsules has been very low, meaning they're going to update that device. But according to Leander, the revamped Time Capsule is going to be a central part of the iCloud service. And here's what he says, which is very interesting. He says that according to his source, Apple has developed a system to make users' Time Machine backups available through its new iCloud service. This is the home folder access concept, he says, that we've detailed before, how we'll be accessing using NFC, iPhones, and the role of the Mac App Store. So all your files and data, pictures, videos, Word, Excel documents, and so will be available anytime, anywhere on both Mac OS X and iOS devices. So basically, your iPad is going to rely on this Time Capsule, if you get it, for a lot of the cloud backup services. So he says the iCloud won't be fed through Apple's massive new data center in North Carolina. Instead, the system will be based on Time Capsule, Apple's wireless router, and the hard drive backup that's currently sold in 1 and 2 terabyte versions. He says that, as rumored, Time Capsule will be updated, becoming less of a local backup, and more of a personal cloud server, like the newly souped up NAS network-attached storage drives from companies like iOmega. He goes on to say the new Time Capsule is rumored to run on iOS and come with embedded A4 or A5 CPUs. He also says that his source told him how the home folder access system works. Files saved on your computer are backed up instantly to Time Capsule, which makes them available to remote Macs and iOS devices, like the iPad. So if you make any changes on any computers, those changes are updated through iCloud and stored in your Time Capsule. The Time Capsule archives and serves up your files even when your computers are off. When you get home and fire up your desktop computer or laptop, the files are automatically synced across your devices. So, this is interesting, because I think what's going on is Apple is basically going to tell computers, you know what, the cloud is great, but wouldn't the cloud be safer if you controlled the cloud instead of some company? Because companies can go out of business, companies can be hacked. Wouldn't it be better if you controlled the cloud? He goes on to say, Leander, that the system sounds like Dropbox, the web-based file hosting system that's won accolades for simplicity and ease of use. But in Apple's case, your personal cloud will be maintained not on company servers, but on your own Time Capsule. So he then updates it and says, actually, it looks like the technology is already built into Lion. Remember, the Lion beta for the Mac is already out. He says the auto-save versions and resume features in Lion look an awful lot like a smart file management system designed for the cloud, resembling the way iOS and Google Docs save and manage multiple versions of documents. In addition, Time Machine in Lion is tightly integrated with Versions, making it more of a real-time backup system. Versions also appears to be used to make Time Machine much faster to open. So, and basically the airport, in addition to Time Capsule, the Airport Express router is going to get an update with more processing power. So it's interesting. So Apple's iCloud service and the service that's going to help your iPad may require users to get an additional Apple router, like a new one, and a new Time Capsule router. So it's going to be very interesting in this twist. But frankly, I like to have control over my data, and I don't know if I feel too comfortably having everything in the cloud. Okay, so, I've seen iPads everywhere, and a lot of my friends are getting iPads, and I'm seeing more people at work. But it seems like the iPad, as well as other services that are not traditionally in the government or an enterprise, are making their way into the federal government and enterprise. And there was a very compelling story in the Washington Post on May 30th saying federal government loosens its grip on the BlackBerry. And basically the story is that actually top people in the federal government are finally pushing various agencies of the federal government to adopt newer technology that the users, the people who work in the federal government, use at home. And it says that at various top agencies, agency directors and senior officials are using iPads Android phones or web-based email in their personal lives and asking IT administrators why they can't use them at work. The article goes on to say, but the bigger push is coming from frontline workers who see the value consumer technology could add to their working life, making them more mobile and less tied to an office. The article quotes Vivek Kundura, the federal government's chief information officer, who says, quote, people have better access to information technology at their homes than they do at work, and that's especially true in the public sector, end quote. He goes on to say, quote, if you look at the average school kid, he or she probably has better technology in his or her backpack than most of us do in the government offices, end quote. And so this is so true if you think about it. The federal government's kind of stodgy, and a lot of enterprise establishments are stodgy. They're using Microsoft products. They're using BlackBerry, which is really last decades and the decades before technology. And so you're seeing more and more iPads being used. Here at the apparently that the ATF, there are about 50 iPads or iPhones in use, and the number could increase to 100 soon, the article says. At the Pacific Northwest National Laboratory, the 1,000 BlackBerries used last year have dropped to about 700 as workers picked other smartphones. And it goes on to say the State Department is testing iPads. Congress now allows iPads and iPhones on the House floor. It goes on to say that the Department of Veteran Affairs is getting ready to allow its clinicians to choose an iPad or iPhone instead of a BlackBerry. So we're seeing really massive penetration by the BlackBerry, by the iPad, as well as the iPhone and Android devices. It even says here that the GSA, which is a big federal agency, is going to switch. Is in the process of moving 17,000 employees into Gmail. Federal government has historically used Microsoft Exchange and BlackBerries, and now we're going to see it using Gmail. So, look, what we're seeing happening is a technological revolution in the United States. And companies like Apple, like Gmail, like Twitter, like Facebook, they're on the forefront of that. While companies like Microsoft and BlackBerry are on the olden days of technology. Speaking of BlackBerry, at Cult of Mac, they actually think that the iCloud service that Apple's going to announce tomorrow could help Apple kill BlackBerries once and for all. And what it goes on to say is that this iCloud service could make iPhones really attractive and iPads very attractive. Frankly, I was thinking, I could even turn my iPad into my standalone phone because it has 3G and it has like these voice services that you can use to make calls. So the article goes on to say that one UBS analyst, Maynard forecasts iCloud initially attracting 200 million iTunes customers, or 10% of those signed up for the Apple service. He believes that Apple could recoup some of its investment in free apps through a $15 per month subscription fee for a hosting service. So I don't know. I think this is really going to boost iPad sales even more and iPhone sales even more. Okay, so one of Apple's competitors in the tablet market, a company called Cano, K-N-O, back in February there were stories in Engadget that Cano, which was seeking to build a tablet, like a multi-display tablet, was shopping around its hardware, and the story came out now that indicates it's totally out of direct competition with the iPad. So the sure sign that Kano is in full exit from the tablet market was that it released an official iPad app for free. The app gives access, according to electronista.com, to the full complete textbook layouts of its earlier hardware with highlights, note-taking and sharing, and a book manager that sorts by the course. So Cano is mainly a textbook company, and a store inside gives you access to 70,000 textbooks that are discounted by as much as 30 to 50% off their paper equivalents. And the iPad app works with any iPad using iOS 4.2 or later. So, this is a sign that Apple is just really dominating the iPad market, and Kano going out of business is now having an iPad app is just good for people who use iPads. Well, you might like to get your music on the iPad through the iTunes store, just downloading music tracks, but you can get a lot more interesting music, I guess, by buying apps. And a sign that artists are taking apps as a more interesting route to deliver music and other content is that there's a story out that the international music artist Bjork is set to launch a new album which will come in the form of an iPad app collection. And iPod NN reports that her 7th album, called Biophilia, will be released as an app album on the iPad along with a traditional CD release. This Biophilia album will come as one large app within which there will be at least 10 separate apps, at least one for each album track. So each app is intended to allow the user to explore each song in depth through a multimedia experience, which will also include the ability to remix the songs themselves. It goes on to say the app album is being produced by an interactive artist named Scott Snibble, not as an interesting aside from the main CD release, but very much as part of the whole creative process. And the app will launch ahead of the full album release and will evolve over time. So I think this kind of makes sense, because the thing about apps are they can be so dynamic. You can link text and music and video, have all sorts of different, pages within the app with multimedia content. So an artist like Bjork can be much more creative with an app as a music or album than just by selling an individual MP3. And if you think about it, this is a way for music artists to bring back the paper albums that we used to have in the 70s or in 80s. And there was all this album art and covers. And wouldn't it be great if you now had an app that you collected that was just really beautifully designed? So it's a real way for artists to stand out. I wouldn't be surprised if Lady Gaga goes this route, comes out with an album, an app that costs like $30 and has all sorts of interesting interactive features. Because you can do much more with an app than you can with just a pure MP3 or even an ebook. Okay, so one of the, I think, let's talk about apps now, and one of the killer upgrades, one of the killer features that I've ever seen implemented by Apple happened this week, and I'm so excited about it because the iWork apps were updated. Now, you may wonder, as an iPad owner, what's the big deal? Because you've already had an iWork suite on the iPad, the Keynote suite, which is like PowerPoint, the Keynote app, the Pages app, which is like a word processor app, and Numbers. Well, they were updated, and they were updated with new features, but they were also updated to work on the iPhone. But here's the thing that really, quietly was updated by Apple that is a real killer feature. And that is that Apple updated the Keynote Remote app, which now costs only 99 cents, to now work among iOS devices. So what does this mean? That means you can put Keynote Remote on an iPhone and through Bluetooth or Wi-Fi control Keynote on an iPad. So this is really a huge development. So I checked this out, and it really does work, and it's pretty amazing. So what this means is I bought the $1 Keynote Remote app, and I put it both on my iPad and my iPhone. So first I started off with hooking up my iPad with the HDMI connector to a big monitor. okay? Because the iPad will play the Keynote to the monitor, right, in play mode through the mirroring out. So then you can control now with the iPhone the iPad remotely, and I always thought Apple should do this because it just seems so obvious and such a great way to control Keynote on the iPad. So the way you can connect it is by pairing the iPhone and the iPad through Bluetooth. Now, I found that kind of buggy. I tried this at work, and I guess there were too many Bluetooth phones around. So I was able to connect it once, but later on, I had a devil of a time connecting the Bluetooth together. But if you have one of those Airport Express Wi-Fi routers and just take that around with you, they're very small, and plug it in, you can create your own little Wi-Fi network. And through Wi-Fi, the iPhone and the iPad vice versa really communicate well with each other. So this was pretty cool. So like I could take my iPad to a speaking engagement, hook it up to the monitor, put the PowerPoint on the iPad, and then control it with the iPhone. So and on the iPhone you can see in portrait mode the notes if you want that are like embedded in Keynote, or you can put it in landscape mode and see the next slide that's going to come up. So this is a killer feature because both of these devices are very light. So you could go to all sorts of, for business people who are doing presentations or speaking at conferences, you can take an iPhone and an iPad and you're all set. But here's the killer thing. You can switch it around. So I put the Keynote on the iPhone and then hooked up the iPhone with the HDMI connector out to a big monitor. So now my iPhone is running this big monitor, and I walked around wirelessly with the iPad and controlled the iPhone's Keynote presentation. On the iPad, you just have more screen size, so you can see your notes in portrait mode on the iPad. You can see the notes, your speaking notes that the audience doesn't see, much clearer. And so, you have this choice now. The choice is immense. And actually, the iPad also, if you have a Mac or a MacBook Air, the iPad the Keynote Remote will also control a Mac. So you could use an iPhone or an iPad to control a MacBook Air. So the options here are amazing. And, it's gotten some press, but to me, I think business people or even school teachers, anybody making presentations with an iPhone, iPad, or MacBook or MacBook Air, the options you now have to control stuff are amazing. So, Keynote, the iPad app, and the iWork and Numbers, they also got upgraded in terms of fonts and templates and features. But the real upgrade to me is that they can work with each other and that you can control Keynote on the iPad remotely. To me, is phenomenal. Okay, so there were some other upgrades for Apple apps for the iPad. iMovie for both the iPhone and the iPad was upgraded, as was GarageBand for the iPad. And let's see, the iMovie update resolves an issue with missing media in some projects, provides for more accurate clip grouping by date in the video browser, and fixes an issue where a project's background music would not fade in and out properly. And I got to tell you, the video browser, I haven't tested it out, but it definitely needed improvement. One of the very frustrating things in iMovie for the iPad is if you had a lot of videos in your photo library, it was very hard to navigate through them. So this apparently improves it. Now, GarageBand, which is only on the iPad, now has been upgraded and it allows the ability to import AIFF, WAV, and CAF audio files, as well as 16-bit and 44.1 kilohertz Apple loops. And you can now copy and paste of audio from supported apps into GarageBand is now supported. And an issue of GarageBand freezing when playing smart instruments has been fixed. Additionally, both updates provide overall reliability. So I kind of like this. I really was wondering, when are they going to make it easier to move audio in and out of GarageBand? So right now you can, I'm hoping what this means is that I can copy music out of GarageBand and paste it into iMovie. That would be epic. This copying and pasting of multimedia between apps and among apps is desperately needed if the iPad, as well as the iPhone, is going to become a sort of a standalone computing device. And I think the iPad more and more is going to become a standalone computing device. So I'm going to test this out. I've upgraded both the iMovie and the GarageBand apps. But I sometimes have done my podcast in iMovie or tried to record it in GarageBand on the iPad. And I would like, for example, what if I wanted to record some music or a intro music for a podcast in GarageBand I'm hoping that with this upgrade I can just do it in GarageBand on the iPad and then copy and paste it into iMovie or some other audio app, because that's what we really need. Up till now, basically, you have to email your music, but even if you email it, you can't. Let's say you emailed it yourself in iPad. Previously you couldn't just take that music that you emailed to yourself and then import it into some other app. So this inter-app swapping of content of media, I think, is going to be something that's going to be big in iOS 5 as well. But it looks like Apple's implemented it already with this iMovie and GarageBand update. Very cool. The other thing is, it looks like you're going to be able to email music to yourself and then cut and paste it into GarageBand. Okay, so one of the coolest things I saw this week on the internet was something that was on Cult of Mac that linked to, which was a guy playing on YouTube GarageBand on the iPad, and it was truly amazing because it was shows you what an incredible instrument it can be for musicians. So if you're watching the video version of this podcast, I have it playing, and I'll play some of the music in the background as I'm talking right now. And so if you don't have the video version of this podcast, I can tell you what's going on. So in the video, which was posted by someone named, I'll get you the name later on. I'll make sure that I put the name up in the video. But basically it's a video of him playing the guitar on GarageBand, and he's recording this song which you're hearing right now, the drums, the guitar, and another instrument, and he has the 3 videos playing simultaneously. But it sounds highly professional, and it really, I think, just shows you that we're gonna have new instruments in the future, if not already. Bands have already started using the iPad to do productions, and here he's going to the solo version of the guitar lead. And it really just, makes you wonder, are our kids going to have iPads and these sort of digital displays be the controls for their music? Are these going to be the instruments of the future? I mean, the Beatles and Elvis Presley, they had electric guitars, which was really a technology transforming traditional acoustic instruments and giving it that electric, buzz. And then we had the Moog synthesizers that came around in the 70s. That's what Space Odyssey, or 2001, The Space Odyssey, the music in that was a synthesizer. But now, and then of course we had, digital music workstations on computers. But the thing about the iPad is they're a digital music workstation on an iPad, but plus they transform the iPad into an instrument. Now the Mac, you could do this on a Mac with a keyboard and a controller, but the iPad is so mobile and it has this big touch screen. And if you're watching this video, he's he's playing this guitar and he's fingering it with both hands, and it's this incredible solo. So, to me, this was one of the most compelling things I've ever seen, and really shows what you can do with GarageBand. It's really, I think, a revolutionary application on a revolutionary device, the iPad. So check out the full video. I have a link for it on maxfuture.com. It's a YouTube video, and I'll put up the credits on the video. But it's really inspiring. And I guess George Lambros is the guy who did it. So how are we going to top that? How are we going to top that? Incredible guitar performance on the iPad, and how are we going to top off the fact that you can now control Keynote on the iPad? Well, an app came out which got me really excited, but it also kind of bummed me out. Because I've been using an iPad for a long time, and for about a year now, I had this vision of like where the iPad's going to go and how it could be really a killer business device. And one concept I had is that what if you could like load documents on the iPad and then wirelessly share them so people could see them on multiple other iPads, like sitting around the table. So in other words, rather than like being at a business meeting, people hand out flyers and documents, and they all look at the same documents. And, attorneys, they do depositions, and they hand out exhibits at the depositions to the witness, to the other attorneys attending. And so in many business settings, you have this concept of people looking at common documents and discussing them. And I thought, once I started seeing that there were these apps, I remember the first app, there was this app that allowed you to use the iPhone to control another iPhone, to take the picture with another iPhone and then have it send the picture back to that iPhone. And then we saw the Scrabble app for the iPad, which allowed the iPhones to work wirelessly with the iPad as in the game of Scrabble. And so anyways, let me get to the bottom line. Interestingly, a company called Condé Nast Digital, which is the big magazine company, they came out with a free app, and it's not necessarily free, called Idea Flight, IDEA Flight, Idea Flight. And it's a free download, but has a $7.99 pilot upgrade. Now, I downloaded the app, but I need to find somebody else with an iPad, because the way it works is you load a PDF into this program, and if you're the pilot, and you can publish the PDF to other people who are wirelessly near you, either by Bluetooth or Wi-Fi, and they can see the same document. So this is my concept. But obviously it's a universal concept, so I'm not going to sue them. But this is huge. Now I want to test this out. They give you one like sort of test PDF for free in the program. So if you can find somebody else and have them download Idea Flight for free, you can test out for free the one PDF they give you. But if you want to be the pilot, you got to do an in-app purchase of $7.99, which sort of makes sense. It's a good business strategy. So this is what they say. Idea Flight enables one person, the pilot, to control the screens of multiple iPads viewed by the passengers. All you need is the app and a wireless connection via Wi-Fi or Bluetooth to command the iPads and attention of your audience. Passengers will have an engaging experience on the iPad alone or in tandem with a traditional whiteboard presentation. Plus, pilots can control the content before, during, and after the gathering. So this is kind of huge. It says that iFlight includes a passenger list allowing passengers and pilots to connect via LinkedIn using the passenger list as a virtual cheat sheet and add attendees to your LinkedIn network while your gathering is underway. So you can share ideas without granting permanent access to your presentation unless you choose to. You can email from Idea Flight to invite people to your presentation and direct them to download the Idea Flight app. You can, I guess you can know your audience, view their names, titles, and photos using LinkedIn, invite them to connect. You can display your presentation on an external monitor for large audiences, as well as simultaneously on up to 16 iPads, and you can guide presentations in locked mode and then unlock to allow passengers to scroll or tap to screens of particular interest or to recap the presentation. Now, this is amazing. I mean, think about it. Think about what you could do. You can load PDFs. An attorney doing a jury trial could like show on a big screen the PDF contents, which are the exhibits, and then the attorney could hand out iPads to every juror, and they could see the document close. So I think this is huge. I think I can't wait to find other people with iPads so I can like test this out. We have only one iPad in the family. It's called Idea Flight, and it's free. The developer has also made some other famous apps, Epi, which is the Epicurus recipe and shopping app, and Gourmet Live, and Style.com, and Traveler. So this is really cool. I can't wait to try this out. I think this is just gonna show how the iPad can become revolutionary in business. How about in education? What do you do? I mean, right now you can share with 16 iPads. How about in a school? In a school that hands out iPads, they can share. A teacher can like start flipping through a PDF and highlighting stuff and saying, here's what you should be looking at. And it's sort of like a teacher. Imagine a teacher had a magic book, a textbook, and everybody else had that textbook. And as the teacher's reading the magic textbook and flipping pages and highlighting stuff, everybody in the class has a magic book and sees the pages that are being highlighted. So this app is very, very cool. Okay, so a number of apps came out this week that are worth mentioning. On May 30th, a minimalist writing app came out that's getting a lot of kudos called OmniWriter for iPad. It's $4.99. And, if you're into sort of minimal, writing, this is probably you'd want to get. So this is what they say. The secret to OmniWriter lies in its simplicity and apparent lack of functionality. OmniWriter for iPad focuses on doing one thing well, improving the writing experience by completely redesigning the keyboard interface from a usability perspective. So that's the big thing. That basically, the other thing is apparently when you write, you only see like the sentences that you're writing, and blocks everything out. So if you're into the sort of hyper minimalist writing, this is, I guess, what you want. Personally, I'm not going to buy this. I have a lot of writing apps, but if you're really into the minimalist movement, this is the way to do it. Okay, so another note-taking app came out on May 24th, 2011, version 1.0, called NoteFile, and that's $4.99. And the big thing about this app, again, it seems to have like a minimalist design. But the big thing is it's another one of these syncing apps that allows you to sync your notes among your iPhone, iPad, iPod Touch, and a dashboard on your Mac and the website. And it also has support for Text Expander Touch Snippet. Text Expander is that thing where you can create little shortcuts for text that you use all the time. And so that works with this. And, it's just another one of these note syncing apps. This one looks particularly pretty. It's got sort of a beige brown interface. And so if you're looking for some note-taking, it's only $4.99. Okay, so a fun game app for the iPad came out on June 2nd, and I might get it for my son who loves trains, and it's called Incredible Express HD. It's $2.99. And basically, it's like a you get to run your own little train company and create your own tracks and operate your own railroad points and build your own, railroad system. So it has 80 levels. It has 4 bonus campaigns and different locomotives to choose from and different player layers. Look, little boys in particular love trains and train sets, and I think it's it's pretty good. Now, one of the reviews, though, says, just what I wanted, but at the end of levels, there's a little lag. Also, a full black screen crash at the end of the first level while updating other apps. This is on an up-to-date iPad 2. So, look, it's a brand new game. It's $3, but, I think I'm going to get it for my son because he loves trains. Okay, so the next app is somewhat revolutionary. Now, I've mentioned other revolutionary apps on this show, but this one also caught my eye. It came out on June 1st, 2011, and it's called Readable. So the app is sort of like your Instapaper app, which is you can save, stories from the web and read them, stripped of advertising in a nice user interface. But here's the feature that I've never seen before, which is that it has face detection and auto detects to pause or play scrolling. So on an iPad, I guess an iPad 2, this device sees your face and can sense where you're reading and then scrolls. So I'm tempted to try this out to see how well it works. Now, we had that other device, what was it, i3D, which is sort of a demo by these French designers to show how you can create a 3D interface by having the iPad track your face and then shift the data a little bit to make it look 3D-ish. But this is a very cool concept. If this really works well, think about it. You don't have to scroll. Like now, Instapaper has a feature where you can tilt the iPhone or iPad and it'll scroll. But imagine if you've got a screen that scrolls just by you going down to the bottom of the page. And that's what this Readable app, which costs $2.99, claims to do. Now, it also works with Google Reader, Delicious, and Read It Later. So if you have those services, you can load articles directly into it. You can also share articles with Pinboard, Tumblr, Facebook, Twitter, and other places. There's 9 speeds of auto-scrolling if you want to do that. There's paste and play. There's precision pagination and page scrub, in-page search, read offline in airplane mode, copy test, and it's a universal app. So, let's see. One person gave it a review and said, does not work with Google Reader, needs a bigger font, and it's slow. But to me, the killer feature, if it works, is this face recognition and scrolling using the face. Okay, so the iPad's a great interface for jotting down ideas and sketching and artistry. And there's a new app that appears to, well, maybe it's not so new, but it's version 2 of this app came out on June 2nd. And it's called Designer 2. So basically, it's a designing app, and we've seen more of these before. This one looks, kind of interesting. It basically has an infinite canvas. You can pan and drag the canvas at infinitely. Infinite level undo. You've got color, brush, and picker. You can save the pictures to your photo albums. You can publish the drawings to the THIX, that's THIX Museum. All users of THX Science Sense series can access to it for no fee. There's free and quick registration, so it works with this THIX service. So, it appears to be like a pretty detailed design app. There are no reviews yet for the app. They've made other apps like Chemist and Thix Museum. So look, it's $2.99. So if it's not that much money if you're a big design person and like to sketch and create all sorts of interesting designs, this might be your app. And again, it's only $3 to check it out. Okay, the next app is free, and you should download it and get it. It came out recently, was updated on May 31st, but it's essentially it's the app of the New York Public Library, which is one of the most prestigious and large libraries in the world, and it's called Biblion. And I guess the first version is Biblion World's Fair. So the New York Public Library has just incredible archival material, and its archive are filled with pictures and all sorts of stuff from the New York's World Fair in 1939 to 1940. And I downloaded this app, which again is a free app, and it's great. I got sort of lost looking at all sorts of content and data from like this period of the late 1939 and 1940. So what it says is with Biblion, you can jump from stack to stack, story to story, as you move through the infoscape of the World's Fair, created directly from the New York Public Library's Manuscripts and Archives division. The fair, like the library, has something for everyone, covering a range of topics from technological innovation, music, pop culture, to a world dealing with the crisis of war and economic hardship. So with this app, you can read original essays from writers such as Karen Abbott, William Grimes, Henry Jenkins, Elliot Kalan, James Morrow, and others. You can view the General Motors famous Futurana ride in full color from the original carousel. You can explore the development of the fair's design, the uniforms, the buildings, the exits, including Salvador Dali's then shocking Dream of Venus extravaganza. And you can relish the outrageous restaurant ideas that never made the cut. You can learn about the fate of the Czechoslovakia pavilion after the country was invaded by Hitler. You can discover what was buried inside the Westinghouse Time Capsule, not to be opened until the year 6939. You can fly from story to story. So it's very cool. So I think more libraries are going to do this, particularly the large ones, where they have all this archival material. It's just been sitting there. And with Biblion, you can just archive this sort of lost period of time and all this content. I think more of the libraries are going to create apps because it brings further understanding of the library system. The reviews are generally positive. One person gave it 4 stars but said the interface is a little odd to use and get used to, but I think it does its job of encapsulating the huge subject of the World's Fair, and it's free. And I agree, it's free. This is a pretty cool app, and I encourage anyone who's interested in history and America's history to get it. Okay, so if you're looking for a way to connect back to your Windows computer using your iPad or your Mac, it seems like the app to have is called Splashtop Remote, and there's a free version of the app that gives you 5 minutes of access to your computer. But the paid version is only $2.99, and essentially this is an app that remotely connects to your PC or Mac, although it seems to be more built for the PC. And the reason it caught my attention is it's one of the highest grossing apps in the App Store. Like Apple ranks them when you go to iTunes, and this one's way at the top. And it's got pretty solid reviews by people. It's very high, and basically its selling point is that you can actually play your content on your computer, on your PC. The things that it really highlights is that you can access your PowerPoint with full animation and sounds. You can access Microsoft Outlook with folders and archives. You can access Excel and Word applications with 100% compatibility. You can watch Hulu, AOL Video, Yahoo Video, and other Flash videos, and all sorts of media formats like Reel, WMVA. You can play 3D games. You can access your browser remotely, whether it's IE, Firefox, Chrome, and Safari, Flash, Java. So I think the reason this is the top, one of the toppest, grossing apps is that a lot of people who own iPads have Windows computers. Now this works with the Mac, but my sense is that this is the remote, Windows app of choice for people. The Windows version, the app now on Windows computers has something known as Internet Discovery, so you can get back to your computer just through the internet instead of specifically formatting your router. So again, it's only $2.99 now. Usually it's $9.99. So if you're into that sort of thing, it seems like this is the app to check out. Okay, so finally I wanted to end up with this final video, which is somebody got a hold of iOS 5 in France and showed how powerful it is on the iPad. And it's truly amazing. And I'm going to start playing it for you here.
Hi everybody, my name is Simon, and I got an exclusive preview on the new iOS update for you. So let's start. First of all, I'm not sure if this is a software bug or just kind of a new feature. Anyway.
Okay, so if you're watching this, what's clearly he's doing, it's a gag. He's making it look like interactive, but he's sort of like a magician. So he can do cool things like take things out of the iPad. So he makes it look like it's interactive, like in real life. So it's a really joyous video. So I'm just gonna play the rest of it. If you've got the video version of this iPad, it's really funny. But if you don't, thanks for listening to the iPad podcast. And next time I talk to you, it'll be after WWDC and the magic of iOS 5. So I think there's going to be just amazing things to see. And so why don't you just watch or listen to the rest of the video, and I'll see you next week.
For the sport fans among you, simply use the tennis app to play against your iPad. You can use your iPad as a tennis racket, and the best part of it, you don't have to buy any new balls because they are free gift with the app. So I hope you have fun improving your serve and volley. Playing tennis outdoors is a lot of fun, but the weather has to be just right. No problem, simply use the weather app to change the weather forecast. Just watch. Okay, to be honest, you can't really change the weather, but you could offer to fix her hair and probably get a date. Whew. Streaming music and videos is a great standard feature, but in the future you will be also able to stream real objects. So streaming Coke and milk is the first prototype. Simply set up a FaceTime connection. So I hope he's ready. That's my camera guy over there. Hi.
Hi, Simon.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, are you ready?
I'm ready.
Here we go.
Here's the straw.
Yes, a bit higher.
Okay, like that.
That's fine. Now the Coke, please. Yeah.
Now the glass.
Let's stream it. I guess this would solve quite a few problems in the world.
That's all. Do you still?
Oh, just a second, please. Now the milk. Oh, sorry. Oh my God, I'm sorry. This is a beta version. They have to do some debugging there. Sorry. Actually, I love practical jokes. And I think the iPad still is a really magical device and a lot of fun too. I hope you enjoyed. Bye-bye.
Okay, thanks for listening to episode 57 of the iPad podcast. This is Lex. This is June 5th, 2011. Please feel free to email me at maxfuture@gmail.com. And if you can leave a positive feedback in iTunes, that would be greatly appreciated. See you after iOS 5 is released. Take care.